When learning a first language, babies start by absorbing language sounds and imitating what they hear. In the first 5 months to 1 year, they are cooing, babbling, and making lots of sounds. Between the first and second years, children begin labeling objects. They also start putting words together, although the words are not quite joined into phrases, and they are making lots of sounds. Then between 2 and 4 years, there's an explosion of language. They acquire a lot of new vocabulary. They start putting 2 or more phrases together and are telling lots of stories. By the time they reach 4 or 5, they basically have all of the syntax of their native language. They express spatial relations such as up and down. They know verb inflections so they can talk in different tenses. And they are ready to go to school in their native language. In many ways, the stages of learning a second language follow those of learning a first language. The first 6 months are called the silent period. Learners are absorbing the surrounding language and they understand a lot more language than they can produce. Within the first 6 months to 2 years, they are in the early production speech emergence stage. Learners have enough general language and vocabulary to produce simple sentences. They are able to carry on social conversations. Within 2 to 4 years, learners are in that intermediate stage. This is when language explodes, and they have more expanded vocabulary and sentence complexity. During the 4 to 10 years range, we start to see the intermediate to more advanced language development. The learner uses specific and technical vocabulary, varies sentence lengths, and uses increased linguistic complexity. There are several similarities in learning a first and second language. First, there's a predictable order. Everybody starts out in a silent stage and then moves through stages, gaining more complexity and more vocabulary in language. Secondly, errors are a completely natural part of the practice of learning a language. For example, we think of a young learner saying, "He goed home," and that is something a second language learner would say too. Thirdly, whether learning is a first or a second language, the most meaningful, supportive, communicative setting is the best environment for language development. Especially in the beginning, learners can understand more than he or she can say. And lastly, it requires a lot of time to become fluent. Here is a quick look at those similarities between first and second language acquisition. Language development has a predictable order. Errors are a natural part of acquiring new language. Learners should be in a meaningful, supportive, and communicative environment. Learners understand more language than they can produce. It takes a long time to become fluent. Let's look at the individual differences in learning a second language. Not everyone learns a second language at the same rate or to the same level of fluency. There are many personal, community, and societal factors that affect language acquisition. For instance, learners with higher levels of literacy in their native language often gain literacy skills in the new language faster. Language distance, meaning how similar the second language is to the person's first language. For example, Spanish uses a similar alphabet system to English, so a learner can make many connections between letters and words. Not the case with Chinese or Arabic. Amount of time spent interacting with native English speakers. Peer influence. Is it cool to be bilingual? Is speaking my native language cool? Do my peers prefer English? What peers consider cool will influence a language learner's motivation. And how much choice the learner had in coming to the United States. Think about how learning English can mean giving up a part of your identity. The status and emotional connections to a language matter. Learning a language happens in a social and political context which greatly influences the acquisition process. Now let's go back to our comparison to first and second language. There are key differences between the two. First languages are learned at home. Second language is usually learned in an educational setting or for a job. First language is usually learned in childhood. Second language, it may be learned at any age, from children to adults. First language, you learned in order to communicate to people around you. Second language, there are many reasons to learn a second language, including travel or general interest. But sometimes you have no choice. Sometimes you need it to succeed in school or at a job. Learning a first language is usually considered an unconscious process. Learners learn by being exposed to the language around them. Learning a second language is usually considered a combination of conscious and unconscious process. First language, no pressure to learn. Second language, we usually want learners to master it pretty quickly so they can do well on standardized tests or to communicate in the job. For first language, reading and writing are not mandatory. Second language, for school-aged children, this is mandatory. Lastly, in first language, everyone becomes fluent. This is not necessarily true in the second language. These are the guiding questions for this week's module. What are the similarities and differences between learning a first and a second language? And why does this matter in your classroom?